Buenos dias, boys and girls. How is everybody today? Hi, Mr. Owl. Hi, Dill.
Dill?
You haven't heard? Dill is staying with us for a while until she gets her visa worked out to get back over to the United Arab Emirates for her job as a self-retrieving rugby ball.
Rugby? Well, maybe she should try soccer instead. I hear they have some new openings on the FIFA board.
Hi, kids. It's good to see you all here this morning.
Sunday salutations.
Mr. Owl, why are you saying hello in such a fancy way? Sunday salutations? That's more syllables than it takes me to order lunch at McDonald's.
We worms are just a polite species, I guess. Even our jokes are polite. Like, I'll bet you don't know why dogs don't talk to their feet.
Huh?
Because it's not polite to talk back to your paw.
Excuse me, but could you two please pause your polite little discussion and save it for after church? We're supposed to be talking about religious subjects, about John Wesley and the history of Methodism in particular this morning.
You're right. So this polite skeleton walks into a coffee shop and says, "May I have a double latte and a mop?" Amen.
Amen?
Amen. Saying amen makes something religious.
Well, I never.
Speaking of religion, and did you hear about the terrible floods in Texas this past week? Lots of people lost their homes. Do worms and apples ever get flooded out, I wonder?
Well, I did when I was just a wee worm growing up. I got baptized every day.
Baptized every day?
Yup. Our wormhole was at the edge of this housing development, and every afternoon a boy would come by with a hose and try to flood us out. I think he wanted to be a scientist when he grew up, and most of his experiments seemed to have to do with testing whether worms float, or how long it takes to dry them off after they're wet.
Well, at least that last part sounds nice.
Drying us off with a magnifying glass.
Oh.
So, do they?
Do they what?
Do worms float?
Technically speaking, no.
Does this really have anything to do with our subject?
Good question. To float is to be suspended within a fluid, like being buoyed up within water. Like what God's grace does for us. But worms are light enough that they don't actually break the surface tension of water. To the inexpert eye, it might look like floating, but it's more walking on water. You know, like Jesus.
But that's not baptism.
Huh?
You said you were talking about baptism every day. But getting hosed out of your house by a nascent juvenile delinquent isn't baptism. We're not baptized by someone doing experiments on us.
Experiments of grace.
Huh?
Experiments of grace. Here. Let me tell you a little story. Once, about 277 years ago, there was a man named John who was baptized when he was young and who decided to devote his life to serving God. So he became a minister, and he tried really, really hard and thought about things a lot, and he knew that God loved him. But He didn't quite know how best to share that love with others. Then, one day, May 24th, just last week, but in 1738, at a church service in London on Aldersgate Street, while listening to a sermon, he suddenly felt it. Grace, as a palpable presence. He could feel that he was floating on grace, buoyed up by God's hands, and it changed his life. He started experimenting by preaching outdoors, by inventing Sunday school, by making our Christian religion meaningful. Don't you see? God's experiment of grace with John Wesley helped John create what he called his body of experimental and practical divinity to create what became the Methodist Church.
And God's grace is at work in all of us. An amazing grace that will lead us to who knows exactly where.
Speaking of experimental grace, it says here in the bulletin that Emma Hamilton Morton, our district superintendent, is going to be preaching about John Wesley and the Methodism today. The mother, the Methodism today. Talk about a visual aid.
Perfect. Pastor Hamilton Morton, child of God. I can't wait to watch God holding her, just like God is holding us. All of us here, floating us, loving us, now and every day of our grace-filled lives.
Amen.
Now is this a great day